These AMD RX 9070 XT video cards just came fresh off the factory line, and to learn how these cards are made, we met up with this guy.
Support game Nexus. Support Jesus.
This is Zhou, the creative director for Yeston and the creator of the popular anime-themed video cards they make, or as we call them, waifus.
Yeah. I'm his father. She's father.
He led us through Yeston's factories and factory partners in Shenzhen, China, to show us how their video cards are made. From purchasing the AMD GPUs to painting the backplates, their process involved everything from the ultra-clean high-end SMT lines like this one to the more traditional grungy partner factories like this one. And everything in between, like their UV treating process for painting the ever-famous waifus onto the back of the video cards. The cards go through an extensive pick-and-place soldering process handled by SMT lines or a surface mount technology line, followed by assembly, testing, and automated packing. But we're not just seeing an SMT line today, we're also navigating through the hot and dark painting factories that use lengthy corridors designed for heat-treating painted products. These processes are similar at nearly every video card factory we've been to, including MSI's in China, Gigabytes in northern Taiwan, and Sparkles, also in Taiwan, which is an upcoming video we have showing how Intel Arc GPUs are made. You'll want to subscribe for that one. Each factory, though, has its own idiosyncrasies, and the idiosyncrasy for this one is waifus. As always, we fully self-funded this trip and paid for all our own flights and travel. Yeston was not a sponsor of any kind here. We basically asked if we could visit their factories, and they gave us the tour while we were in China. It's sad we have to make this clear, but YouTube these days is so filled with paid-for trips that we feel it's necessary to remind people now and then that for these trips, we pay for all of it ourselves. Alright, let's get into the factory and how the Yeston waifus are made in the 9070 XT. Before that, this video is brought to you by ID Cooling and the Frozen A720 cooler. The A720 air cooler performed well in our testing last year. The A720 is a relatively high-end, dual 140mm air cooler with 7 heat pipes. We found the use of larger fans can be beneficial to acoustic performance given the thermals, although you'll want to check your case for compatibility given the taller nature of the cooler and its fans. ID Cooling uses an all-black look for its A720 and includes mounting hardware for all modern sockets. Learn more at the link in the description below. We are in the waifu factory. This is where waifus get made. That sentence that came out wrong. This is an SMT line behind me, and this part of the process is where all of the individual components are placed on the video card. The first step to making your own waifu is going to the PCB loading. So you can see here there are racks upon racks of the white PCBs, and actually today Yeston is making some of the 9070s here, including some of the XT models. And so these get loaded into this belt here. These get automatically loaded up, where those will get shoved into the first machine. This first machine is for the solder paste process. There's a literal paste of solder that's painted on to the video card to prepare for the receipt of all the components later. And they're using like a mask there that you can see punched out really well right now. So that fills in all of the holes, including all those tiny BGA or ball grid array spots for the GPU. And once it pastes it on, it progresses down to this line. So here we've got the pasted PCB. The next station is this one. This is called AOI, or Automatic Optical Inspection. It takes super high resolution photos, and it's comparing it against a PCB schematic that's already in the software to check for the presence of the solder paste where it needs to be. So this doesn't actually do anything, it just checks things. Once it moves on here, you can start to see the actual SMT, or the surface mount technology process, that uses small reels of components like these. We just saw one that had 497 capacitors on it as an example. So these have all the components in a reel. These are purchased from a separate factory, a supplier. So the pick and place process is literally, it grabs it, moves it, and then it places it down on the PCB itself. They go from the smallest parts to the largest. If they have all the larger components down first, they're gonna have to navigate those small pick and place needles around the larger capacitors and inductors that can potentially not only get in the way and cause damage, but primarily reduce the speed of operation. There's a board getting loaded in right here, machine starts running, and if you're looking at these blue kind of tickers right here, you see each of those ticks as it progresses the components one more at a time into the machine, where the pick and place receives it and then places it down. And all of this is the process that is needed to make sure your waifus are functioning when you receive them in your computer. They place anywhere from 500 to 1,500 components, including, of course, the biggest being the GPU. That is an infrared imaging light. So what it does, it blasts it with IR, and it's intended for checking the positioning of the components as they're pulled across. And so it's really rapidly, as in milliseconds, it scans the components that are on the surface of the pick and place needles. The entire array of maybe 7 or 6 of the individual pick and place arms, those get scanned by the IR and then photographed. And this machine is placing down large components now, so it's putting capacitors in place. And let's move on to the next line. You can see that these machines are very well loved and have been in use an extremely long time. And then this one is the coolest one. So this is where the GPU magic happens. The VRAM components, the actual memory modules alongside inductors and GPU silicon are all placed. This is actually placing a GPU right now, and that is the final step in the process. The reason they do that last is to protect it. So the GPU is the most expensive part. It is the largest single part, and obviously it's the one that's the most sensitive to its precise positioning and the presence of things like dust or other component clutter around it. And so what they do is they pop that on last, which is actually different from some of the other lines we've been to. Some of the lines in the past that we've been to, they'll do it first. It's just a difference in the methodology of how they want to configure their line. So SMT lines are very standard. They're used in motherboards, video cards, car parts, pretty much anything that has small electronic components that get placed onto a PCB and baked, which is part of the last step down here. So this is a reflow oven. 75 centimeters per minute is the speed of the conveyor. The carriers per hour is 300, so at max they can do 300 boards through here per hour, and it's baking at a couple hundred degrees in some spots, but you can see it progresses 160, 170, 180, 200, 235, 245, up to 260, and then back down to 255, and that helps reflow the solder and prep it for the final stages, which will be some of the final component assembly. And in between, you'll notice that this board coming out right now, that could not have possibly been timed better, already has the largest non-GPU parts on it, which includes the power connectors as an example, and the display outs. Those were handled by the guy sitting in between the final pick and place machine and the oven that we just looked at, where the worker will pick up the different parts, like the display out and like the 8-pin or the 16-pin connectors where they exist, plant them in to the through holes in the PCB, and then run that through the reflow oven, at which point it will bind it to the PCB with the solder that's already pasted in there. So that is the process. At the very end of the chain here, this is where all of the PCBs wait for the next stages, but the only step after this is assembly and then the testing. So otherwise, the rest of these lines, you can see they've got, I think it's 4 SMT lines. So this is doing a similar function to some of the more precise ones down the line, where it's looking for the placement of individual components and checking to make sure that everything was planted correctly. So if there's a bad board, they'll send it upstairs, and they have a specialized maintenance and repair team that gets the report from the AOI machine. AOI machine spits out a report that says this is the problem with it, this is where the location of the poorly mounted component is, and then they'll rework it manually, remove it, and place it either through the machine again or by hand, depending on what it is, how difficult it is. And then it goes back through the final process. So now we get over to storage of the components and some of the prep work. This is actually a really cool part of the factory. They're loading these up with the reels of components. So a technician will work over here and manually load these. You can see some of the empty ones down here where these have been depleted. They've gone through the process already. This is basically the inventory section of the factory, where they have all of their individual reels of components. Finally, at the back of the room, this is actually pretty cool. So this is an X-ray machine. They fed a reel through, and by X-ray, it counted 1,060 components. They take these reels, place them in the center, push the button, it feeds it in, and then X-rays it. And that X-ray is used for a few things. The number one is QC. They want to know how many there are, but the big one from what we were told was just making sure that when it's fed into the machine, they know exactly how many components that reel has, which helps them change for the timing. So let's move over to the next part, which is assembly, test, and packaging of the waifus. I did ask if the husbandos have a different process, but they're not willing to share trade secrets at this time, so we'll have to find out next time. So that's the SMT process, but we still haven't seen the most important part for Yeston's video card, which is where the waifu backplates are made. While the PCBs go through the SMT line, a contract factory specializing in metals creates the backplates that will get painted in the next step. Depending on the job, this is either done with an ultra-precise, fully automated laser cutting machine, or with more manual stamping and bending machines. The boss told us that the laser cutting machine works well for huge sheets of metal that can't fit in their other machines, and is also the preference for certain high precision designs. In situations where the design can be stamped instead, that tends to be faster. However, there are certain jobs where this laser is quicker. Opposite the laser, the machine shop whirs with the sound of metal stamping, punching, and bending. This area of the shop is making backplates for video cards, which are first fed in as pre-sized aluminum sheets. Then, the tool mounted to the machine stamps the hexagonal holes and the through holes for the screws in this particular plate. An automated machine installs the threaded inserts that'll receive the screws back at the assembly factory we just left. Upchain from this factory are the tooling factories, which provide large steel tools that fix to the machines, basically templates. Each cost thousands of dollars, and they store them on these shelves. So this whole place is hired by Yeston only for the stamping of the plates, basically. Up next, we jump in the car with Zhou, who was unbelievably excited that I already knew about his favorite Chinese rap group, G-Block.
G-Block.
Yeah, it's G-Block.
We then traveled to a different contract factory. This factory gives the backplates a primer. We've been to a lot of painting factories over the years, some extremely automated and with robot arms, like this one that paints scooter parts and Lian case panels in Taiwan. And some painting factories are more traditional. This is one of those. Workers in a painting prep line first hang the bare metal backplates on hooks in a way that minimizes obstructions to the paint, because you wouldn't want to obstruct your waifu. Then a worker with a compressed air nozzle blasts the backplate to help eliminate dust that could ruin the paint job. They also use a torch to burn off dust and preheat the plate. The factory boss led us through a maze of backplates hanging on hooks like some kind of weird video card butcher shop to show us the paint booth, where workers manually spray the plates with, in this case, a black paint. After getting painted by the manual sprayers, the plates convey their way down the dark hallways, intended only for products, not for people. And work their way towards the baking process, where the paint will be treated on through an oven. The oven is just a gigantic ventilation duct that gets heated between 160 and typically about 200 degrees, depending on the product. Manual factories like this are still common and are used by most of the companies in the industry, but many factories, including the boss of this one, have been moving toward more automation. Yeston let us know that they use a UV printing process that only requires human intervention to start and stop, so we asked if we could go see that too. Alright, so the next stage in the process, we're using the shotgun mic now to be a little quicker, but if we come in closer here, this is a UV printer. So the approach for this is to apply with UV ink to the backplate of the card. This takes 30 minutes to run through this group of cards. This isn't the exact factory that Yeston uses, but it's the same process, and they're getting samples made for the backplate. So the process involves using a 1,000 watt or 1 kilowatt UV printing machine, and it runs across, instantly cures and dries the backplates. So the entire purpose of this is that they can pick them up and go, and there's no oven process. The place we went to before this does the primer coat for these backplates, and so that just paints them black or white, which is what we see here. It's just the base primer color, and then once that's done, it goes to a different factory like this one, where the UV painting is applied with the character design. The reason they do UV for this process is because it's apparently a higher quality and it's a higher vibrancy. So the color is a little closer, they tell us, to what's on the computer. This is just the waste bin. So all the waste ink that drips out comes over here and they can clean it out. The machine is able to, it's got a vacuum top on it, and so it's not useful for metal products like this, but if the factory is printing fabrics, they can turn on the vacuum, which will help pull down and secure or stretch the fabric to hold it in place while it's being UV printed. And then the last thing I'll point out is there is and we'll get a B-roll shot of this, but there is an NVIDIA painted tempered glass panel, so they can also do UV coating on tempered glass. It's the same process for all these products, but see, this is over here. So the first thing I noticed is the SATA cables, where it's just SATA plugged into a customized board, motherboard for the print head. And these are running data to each of these. So on the front side, there's the different print nozzles for different colors. Each one is controlled by a data line from SATA. Additionally, for the inside of the head unit here, they need to make sure there's no air inside, so it's actively pumped out or removed. Pretty cool stuff. It was basically just a very specialized computer inside of a UV printer, which costs about, I think it was 60,000 US or something was the number I was given for the price of these. So not bad, all things considered. So we're back at the first spot. The SMT factory receives the backplates from the painting factory, the cooler and shroud assembly from the heatsink factory, and takes the PCB that it just populated. Assembling a video card is probably more manual than a lot of people would expect, and that's true for most video card factories we've been to. This is mostly because they're changing the lines regularly enough and not making a single model long enough that they're not switching over to full automation. The first step is to scan the card, load it into a carrier, and send it down a manual assembly line. Next, they apply a phase change pad or thermal paste and the black bracket on the substrate. The card goes back into the conveyor belt and gets its PCIe bracket screwed in by a technician who mounts the PCB to a custom jig. Eventually, the boards hit an automated machine that uses a screwdriver robot arm to install screws fixing the PCB to the backplate by going through the top of the board. It goes back onto the line for a worker to install the heatsink and the shroud unit, which are pre-packaged from the heatsink and shroud factories. This is where the cards start to get their character, finally. Next, the card gets visual inspection for QC by the last few workers, checking for evenness of the mount by looking through the PCB to check for any light shining through the RAM or GPU areas. Light would indicate a poor mount and require a rework. And then finally, it ends up here where you've got all the waifus you could ever want prepared to ship out. So there's 120 video cards here. So the speed for this factory, this line, can produce cards at a rate of 230 units per hour for the assembly speed. and it depends on the complexity of the device and which card they're making. So that's for one line though. They have multiple lines. So Yeston typically uses 1 to 2. This factory is shared by multiple video card companies. I think it's a common misconception in the industry. A lot of people think each video card company owns its own factory. A lot of times they share them. Only the biggest of the biggest have their own. So Yeston will occupy 1 to 2 lines. That allows them to produce upwards of 400 something, give or take, cards per hour if they were to use both lines. And then the testing side is next, and that is able to test at a rate of 216 cards per hour. All right, so last step of the process before packaging and getting it actually shipped out. It's been assembled, it's gone through SMT, and now it's going through testing. So you can see our favorite applications. This is my favorite game to play. I have thousands of hours in it, Furmark. So Furmark burns GPUs, really heavily loads VRM components. And so there's 2 types of tests that are commonly done in the industry. That includes Yeston, where 3D Mark is heavily used. That allows the clock to hit its normal clock rates. Furmark is specifically a power virus. And so what Furmark does is it burns so hard on the cores that the drivers now, AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA, they'll clock them down to protect them so they don't burn out, basically. But it's a very useful application for testing GPUs because they're just trying to burn up the VRM. Every single card that is made comes through here. It's the same process we've seen in some of the other factories in the past. And you can see that the power connectors on these are very well loved. These, I'm thinking they go through a lot more power supplies than they do really anything else. The other application they run is either from AMD or NVIDIA specifically to test for I/O presence and functionality of the ports and to test for functionality of the core. This is the packing process where the steps are really simple. We'll keep this one quick. The pre-installed protective single-use plastics from the painting and the shroud factories are removed here. Then something that looks similar to a magic eraser is used to buff and clean the card and the PCIe slot's gold pins. Workers use compressed air to blow the card out once more to remove dust and place a QC mark and a sticker with a signature. The next step includes some manual scrubbing on anywhere scuffed in the process, an ionizing blower to remove even more dust in an ESD-safe way, and then the card gets foam inserts, plastic protection hand applied, receives a serial number, and goes into the anti-static bag. From here, the card and sticker sheet are placed into the cardboard box, which is bent, packed, sealed, and added to a carton. Once they fill a whole carton of the boxes, they move down here. We've got some shots from earlier. So load the box in, tape gets applied from the tape machine to the top. It comes through this one, and this machine just whips those straps on it, like throws them around. So you can actually see the inside of this has the yellow strap loaded into it, and then that gets slapped to the box, literally, goes down the line, gets taped, and then that is the end of the production and the packaging for the Yeston Waifu video cards. This entire process takes about a week at this factory, from SMT to assembly and packaging. That's not because it takes that long for one card to go through, but because they're batching it and running 2 different jobs concurrently for efficiency. Creative director Zhou isn't too involved in the factories. He's more focused on figuring out the products themselves. He hires and works with anime artists and also works with his team to spec the cooler and the VRM. At the end of the day, we had a chance to catch up with him. Zhou Chen. Hi. So we're in front of one of your creations right now, Sakura. Why did you decide to start making waifu GPUs?
I think the marketing of graphics card is so boring.
Okay.
Every brand made design is black. It's hard. It's
black, red.
Yeah, it's straight.
Yeah.
I want to make a new design.
Yeah.
让他们喜欢. Yeah.
To make them that they would like.
Yeah. So I. 这就是我一开始的想法。
所以你第一是什么时候发布的？2018
年。
2018. So you earlier you said You thought the all black, all red, straight lines is kind of boring. How do you decide what you want to work on?
Yeah, we have husband.
Right. Okay, cool. Early design, I guess, drawings.
Yeah.
How does this process work?
When the IP design confirmed, then I will 让工业设计去提取元素去设计这个 ID.
Is this hand drawing?
Yeah,
Hand. Cool. How long does it take to make a design into a product?
From IP to the
从
to the
开始
product,
到对
maybe 1.5 years.
Wow. Okay.
They do this part.
Yeah.
It's too difficult because
This part is difficult.
Yeah.
Why is this? So there's an LED in here.
Yeah.
Right, and then
it's
plastic.
very difficult.
Do you know why? It's like what makes it difficult?
因为它的形状太 特殊。
Strange shape.
Yeah.
So in the Western market,
Yeah.
in the U.S. market especially, I think people really know Yeston from this card,
Okay.
the cute pet, right?
Yeah.
And now they know it from the, as we call them, the waifu cards.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say? 你有什么东西你要告诉我们的观众?
Your taste is good.
Anything else you want to talk about on camera? I think we got it all.
Support game Nexus. Support Jesus.
中文在我
I belong to Jesus.
我听说过中
电子耶稣.
You said you have a nickname also.
Yeah, I also have a same nickname.
Which one?
Yes, 猛男 of Yeston.
What does that mean in English?
Yeston's tough guy.
Tough guy.
Yeah.
Yeston tough guy.
Tough guy, soft graphics card. 反差.
Now you have the tough guy graphics card. This is the tough guy graphics card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a 猛男 pink.
What's next for your designs? What do you want to do next?
It's a secret.
It's a secret. Okay.
Yeah, it's a secret.
Okay.
We'll see.
We'll wait to see.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you,
joining me.
thank
Yeah. And now you know how waifus are made. Whenever someone asks you, you can send them to this video. We shot this video while we were hopping around in Asia for almost a month in the summer this year. As always, we pay for all of our own travel and our flights and hotels related to this. This video is not sponsored by or paid for by Yeston or any of the other factories that are involved in it. If you want to help support educational videos and deep dives like this, we could use your help over on store.gamersnexus.net, where you can grab things like our anti-static mod mats, our tabletop gaming dice kits, including an e-waste inductor kit, and a Snowflake the Cat kit, our Blind Eye t-shirts, coaster packs, and more. Or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.